Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the simple and AI-powered rewards and recognition platform for employee engagement.
Hello everyone, I'm your host Sanjeevani Saikia and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Vantage Influencers Podcast. In our ever-evolving global landscape, the significance of cultural intelligence in the workplace cannot be overstated. Gone are the days when a narrow understanding of one's own culture sufficed. Today, as organizations expand across borders and cultures, fostering cultural intelligence among employees is paramount for achieving sustained success. It's no longer enough to simply coexist. True organizational excellence hinges on embracing diversity and leveraging cultural insights. To shed light on this vital aspect of modern workplaces, we are honored to have Kunal Wadhwani, CHRO for Choithrams Group. His insights into cultural intelligence promise to provide us with a deeper understanding of this essential topic. So without further ado, let's dive into our conversation with Kunal. Hi, Kunal. Thank you so much for joining in today's conversation.
Thank you, Sanjeevani. Absolutely honored to be a part of this podcast.
Pleasure to have you. Before we dive into today's topic, cultural intelligence in the workplace, I'd love to hear a bit about your professional journey so far. So could you walk us through your corporate journey?
My name is Kunal Wadhwani. I'm the CHRO of Choithrams Group. And I have been associated with Choithrams for over 13 years now. It's been an interesting journey. Overall, I have over 2 decades of experience. I have worked with pretty much diversified industries. I started my journey in aviation. I moved on to ITES. From there, I have worked in BFSI, and now I'm working with Choithrams, which is primarily a retail and distribution company, and we deal, into consumer goods. It's been an interesting setup because since the last 13 years, I have been playing a role of a cultural transformation specialist within Choithrams, where we were trying to see how we could transport ourselves from being a very promoter-driven organization to becoming a corporate organization that we are today. So out and out, it's been an interesting journey, and I look forward to sharing my insights with you as the podcast moves along.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. I genuinely appreciate it. Kunal, I think that as globalization continues to shape our professional landscapes, understanding and effectively engaging with diverse cultures have become pivotal. With this in mind, I'm eager to explore the significance of cultural intelligence in the modern workplaces. So could you offer a concise overview of what cultural intelligence entails and, most importantly, why it's increasingly recognized as a critical skill in today's diverse workplace?
Well, this is interesting. Culture is often originated from or attributed to a very specific region or a location whenever we generally have a discussion, whether it is with our friends in our personal space or in our organization. When we look at cultural intelligence as a concept, it primarily refers to the skill to relate and work effectively in a culturally diverse situation. It's the capability to cross boundaries and prosper in multiple cultures as well. So it includes the ability to recognize and adapt to cultural differences within your surroundings. This concept can also give you the confidence to operate successfully in a wide range of settings. Sanjeevani, years ago, this would be applicable to those companies which had offices in many countries. However, today, I live in the UAE in Dubai, and it is so cosmopolitan. It's crucial that we understand our surroundings first and be sensitive to the belief system that so many people have around us for that matter, because there are so many nationalities that work in one country itself. And more importantly, in your organization, when we talk about nationality inclusivity in the organizations. So when we look at the simple idea of culture, it's primarily the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people of society. Hence, from a cultural intelligence perspective, it becomes extremely important to assess and understand the societies around us so that we can belong over there.
Great. Of late, we have been noticing how teams nowadays bring together people from diverse cultural backgrounds.
Right.
In fact, multicultural teams have become the norm rather than the exception. So I think recognizing how cultural intelligence shape these interactions is crucial for deciphering effective team dynamics again.
Right.
So can you share your insights on how cultural intelligence
shapes team dynamics, and the essential role it plays in nurturing collaboration and innovation within these diverse teams?
So, so this is an interesting question because I can't have a very open-ended answer to it. This is not a yes or no kind of a concept. So I may be a bit philosophical when I talk about this. Uh, I believe it is important to understand four primary principles of humans, and there are two perspectives. Humans have behavior, and humans have psychology, right? Behavior is something that people primarily see, as a front-ending kind of a concept. So anything that I do, you observe me and you observe my behavior.
Yeah.
Whereas psychology is very intrinsic, what I think. Okay. Um, there are four primary principles when I look at behavior and psychology of human beings. Two principles for behavior and two principles for psychology. The two principles of behavior would primarily state that I am self-reliant and I can create harmony in my surrounding. The two psychological principles that support the behavioral principles are that I have the ability to do the job and I will treat everyone in my surrounding equally as a comrade, as a team member, as a partner. Now, there are basically these four simple principles of human behavior and psychology that exist. Irrespective of this, we also have chaos that exists around us for that matter. And one possible reason for this kind of chaos is a lack of sensitivity or even clarity at times, for that matter. So I always state that half knowledge is dangerous when it comes to understanding your surroundings. And when we lack know-how of our surrounding, it could be very detrimental to the culture of our organization or even our personal space, for that matter. Hence, the emphasis of cultural intelligence and its influence on team dynamics is so crucial because having lack of sensitivity towards your surrounding, especially in an organization setup, could be basically taking you away from simple aspects and happiness and harmony of people for that matter.
True. As advocates for inclusive workplaces, HR professionals are integral in shaping organizational culture. Again, I believe enhancing cultural intelligence is also one of their priorities.
Right.
So, before we explore strategies, could you share practical recommendations or initiatives that HR professionals should focus on to boost cultural intelligence within their teams?
So it's important that at a self level, we first assess ourselves as individuals. If we aren't sure of how confident we are about a particular topic, we may never be in a position to coach or guide others or even find the right person who could assist our organization and the managers within the organization. To give you an example, I love traveling, and the last 6 years have given me a lot of exposure by being in places, meeting new people, fellow travelers from different countries, for that matter. Interestingly, I have also considered hypnotherapy, as an exercise in the past, and if I may say so, it was an amazing experience. We cannot be in a position to assess our surrounding if we don't have a deeper understanding of self. So it's crucial to first invest time in your own mindset development, at the outset. With that being said, how culturally intelligent are you is what the prima facie question is. And to assess that particular thing, we have to consider certain aspects. Number one being awareness, whether you can recognize differences and similarities across cultures within your setup. Are you aware of your own cultural biases and how they might impact your interactions from people with other cultures? The second aspect I can think of is associated to knowledge in itself. As a person, do you actively seek to understand the cultural norms, practices, and value of others in your surrounding? This could include both the observable aspects like traditions and behaviors and the unobservable ones like the belief systems and the values. The next one is empathy. Simple question: can you empathize with people from different cultural backgrounds, seeing things from their perspective without having any kind of judgments? Adaptability becomes a crucial element. Are you able to adapt to communication styles, behaviors, and expectations to fit various cultural context within your organization? I also believe that HR people should be curious. They should have genuine interest in learning about other cultures, asking questions about it, and engaging in cross-cultural experiences. I think it also boils down to the concept of respect, whether you show respect for different cultural perspectives and practices, even if they are vastly different from your own, or you get indulged in biases in your organization. And I think it should lead to my next thought, which is associated to reflection. Do you regularly reflect on your cross-cultural experiences in your organization to gain deeper insights and improve your interactions with others in your organization? And I think if I have to sum it up, this should definitely end with the focus on flexibility. Are you as an individual okay being uncomfortable and not knowing everything? Can you make sense of unfamiliar situations and blend in when you get to know something new? So, net, I would recommend HR professionals to follow the journey of their own organization's corporate values. This is such a crucial element because many a times, many people don't even remember their corporate values. HR people can do so much. They need to first ask, why do these corporate values exist in your organization?
True.
They can also ask, why were these specific corporate values identified for your organization? How are people who are implementing it? Okay, what is their thought process associated to this implementation? And most importantly, although these 5 or 6 corporate values will be around your organization, we never assess what output we expect these values to create in our organization. So these elements in principle should constitute first as a part of your induction in your organization from a training perspective, and then should be integrated in other training modules as well.
True. So you have touched upon a few really important elements. That's awareness, knowledge, empathy, adaptability, curiosity, respect, and reflection.
Right.
So in the pursuit of fostering inclusive environments, understanding how to effectively measure and evaluate cultural intelligence becomes pivotal. Somewhere I understand it is not very easy to quantify it and measure it, but I think, are there any parameters to it? Like, with diversity being a core asset, HR professionals usually strive to gauge its impact. So considering this, could you shed light on how HR professionals can assess the cultural intelligence of individuals or teams for that matter? And are there specific metrics or indicators organizations should prioritize when evaluating cultural intelligence?
Well, I think I'll speak about 2 points with regards to what we do in Choithrams specifically. And I'm sure there could be much broader perspective in the outside world, but this is something that works for us. Number one, we do a pulse survey in an organization. Okay, and this is in the work globally. This could be called as an engagement survey. It could be called as a job satisfaction survey, but we call it a pulse survey. Why? We call it a pulse survey because there are many factors that are associated in this survey where employees come and they give their feedback associated to how they feel about these factors. Now, when you look at those organizations who are doing really well, they evaluate employees' sentiments primarily, and their sentiments are based on certain factors like respect, trust, fairness, camaraderie, and credibility in the organization. So, what we do is we take these 5 factors, and in these 5 factors, we have a series of questions. So, there are around 52 to 55 questions, if I'm not wrong, which sums up the employee sentiment as it comes. What we do is we take all of the answers, okay, and all the 5 quadrants that I have just mentioned to you, we put those answers in those classifications of respect, trust, fairness, camaraderie, and credibility, and we analyze how each department has performed versus each other. It basically gives you a good report, and it gives you a good understanding of how each department has rated themselves, for that matter, when it comes to their relationship with their managers, how people in a particular department feel about the rewards that the company gives them during appraisals, whether they can trust things that their management communicates to them. Do they respect the ideologies of the organization, the senior leadership, or the policies that the senior leadership is trying to come up with, for that matter? How they feel around their peers is showcased in camaraderie, and whether they very genuinely believe that the organization is a great place to work or not establishes the credibility of the organization. And all these analytics, when they come out, there are ratios, there are percentages mentioned over there. So we can assess which section of our organization seems to be more engaged versus comparatively less engaged, for that matter. The second aspect I can think about is obviously a good performance appraisal system. Now, when we do performance appraisal, you can do it just for the sake of finishing it. And, I can have 10 team members in my team, and I can rate everybody a 5, which is the highest rating out of 5 to 1 rating scale. So That can happen, or I can follow certain guidelines. I can have appropriate feedback mechanism for my employees. And once I appropriately provide my ratings, which is unbiased, under those circumstances, when we consolidate each department's ratings, it leads to a situation where we understand, what kind of high performers exist in each department, and then certain actions are taken accordingly. So even a performance appraisal system gives you a good benchmark of how people feel in their organization. We also have a section in our performance appraisal scheme, which is called as PDA, Personal Development Areas. This personal development area should be filled in conjunction with your supervisor. So there is a discussion that happens between the supervisor and the employee. And then they come to terms that in the coming year, if let's say you have to grow, what kind of skills do I want to see? Those aspects are captured in personal development areas and signed off by both the manager and the employee. And then when HR receives this data, we take the whole bundle of PDA through our performance appraisal module, and it tells us what kind of training need analysis or organization has or what exists at this particular point in time. And hence, accordingly, our programs and benchmarks are also incorporated. I think when you take all of this data, the pulse survey data, the performance appraisal data, it all should be correlated with the retention analytics in your organization. I think it is very, very crucial to understand how people feel in the organization. At the same point in time, it is important to see whether they want to stay back in your organization also or not. We should associate this data with our employee retention analytics primarily because if you, let's say, have a great engagement with a very higher rate of attrition, something is wrong in the setup and that needs to be evaluated.
Interesting. So, Kunal, we are arriving at the end of today's episode. Before we let you go, there's one last thing that both our listeners and I would love to know your take on. So, how do you see the role of cultural intelligence evolving in the future workplace? And are there any emerging trends or considerations that HR professionals should be aware of as they navigate the cultural landscape within their organizations? So, what do you have to say about that?
Well, in my humble opinion, I can only state things basis my experience, and it is for people to pick up and see how they can incorporate things in their organization, because every organization's culture is different or could be different. I believe HR professionals should start observation as a daily exercise beyond the routine interventions that we do. As an HR professional, you should ask yourself a question: am I at an individual level culturally intelligent? What does it take to talk about cultural intelligence? I was reading a Harvard Business Review research, and it states that cultural intelligence is the ability to make sense of unfamiliar context and then blend with it. In other words, it is simply to be able to function effectively in a culturally diverse situation. So, to let's say help you improve in your cultural intelligence journey, maybe HR professionals can consider using some methods or some steps which are associated to having a drive associated to cultural intelligence, having the knowledge associated to cultural intelligence, maybe developing a strategy in their organization. And once you develop that strategy, what kind of action should be associated to that aspect? So if we have to look at these four perspectives, let's say the drive, the knowledge, the strategy, and action, your drive could be a direct correlation with the motivation in the organization. So it is all about the person's motivation to learn about and respond to a different culture. And it is the interest in and confidence at functioning effectively in a culturally diverse setting. When we look at the concept of knowledge, it is primarily associated to cognition and the personal knowledge of how cultures are similar and different at the same point in time. It talks about that cognition. And the point is not to be an expert on every culture, but to simply understand how culture influences behavior, values, and beliefs in your organization. The third part, which I mentioned, was strategy. Yeah, it was strategy. And I think strategy is an interesting part. It is metacognition. It is all about how person makes a sense of culturally diverse experiences. So in the knowledge part, I was speaking about how personal knowledge, about the personal knowledge of how cultures are similar and different. In metacognition in strategy, it is about making sense of culturally diverse experiences in your organization. And the knowledge about cultures enables effective planning in the context of cultural differences and forming culturally sensitive strategies as an output. Finally, I spoke about action. It is simply associated to the behavior. whether it is at an individual level as an HR professional or for that matter, the organization's behavior. I believe, the person's capability to adapt to his or her behavior to different cultures is something that can be a part of action. And this includes handling any difficulties that might arise from that particular perspective.
True. So we have reached the end of today's podcast. Do you have any message for our listeners? Our listeners would be delighted to hear it from you. Also, our audience might want to stay in touch with you post this podcast. So it would be great if you could tell them how they can reach out to you.
I think from a message perspective, globally the situations are changing right now. HR is no longer the same. It used to be a very transactional domain once upon a time. As the global perspectives are evolving, the geopolitical aspects are taking charge. The world is becoming a very smaller place. There are talent shortages which need to be catered to. There are different people from different regions that we bring in our organizations and we work with them. I think time has come where we become very inclusive, within as an individual. And I think once we do that, we'll be in a much better position to understand what our surroundings are, what our organization really needs. I spoke about values. I think we should look at the emphasis of why these values exist in our organization. And if we don't, I think those organizations rather, which don't emphasize on why their values exist, will be, falling back in the race for that matter. I also have read one, research by Economic Forum where 2,000 CEOs globally were interviewed, and 90% of them believe very genuinely that if their organization does not change, their organizations will cease to exist in next 10 years. And I think this is the concept where we are working with the millennials, we are working with the Gen Zs. We need to understand and adapt to all these situations beyond gender, beyond nationalities. I think the time has come where HR professionals start looking at the concept of generational inclusivity. And that is something which is going to lead us to a better future and a better amalgamation in future. So that's my message to the HR professionals. Those people who wish to stay in touch and reach me, I'm available on LinkedIn. Please feel free to connect with me. I look forward to, receiving your questions, if any, or just maybe a hello sometimes. And we can always, catch up over a cup of coffee later. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kunal. Thank you so much for joining in today's conversation. We truly, truly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sanjeevani.
Thanks for listening to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.